how can leaders use rituals to enhance performance on their teams and at work?
One of the first things I do when I talk to a company about their rituals is kind of ask them for a gut check on how they feel about starting up a team ritual or an organizational ritual. And the number one response is eye rolls. It really is, oh my God, this guy's going to make us do this thing. Management is going to tell us we all have to do this thing. It's going to be terrible. If people think of corporate retreats, like, oh my God, they're going to make us do a trust fall again. This is just like terrible waste of time. And it is the case, in fact. And often what people say is, yeah, I had a manager and they saw like a TED talk or something. And then they came into work and they were like, hey, we got to start doing all this stuff. And employees' reaction is absolutely not. And I think that's really important because we tend to think, what can a manager do to kind of institute this new practice? But in our research, what we see actually is that rituals that are really meaningful for people are bottom up. In other words, they come from employees themselves. When you mandate a ritual, people will do it because you're the boss, but you get the eye roll. The nice thing there is actually they're all doing the eye roll at the exact same time. So they're bonding as a group, which is kind of nice. It's just they also hate you a lot. So there's a little risk there. But when they come up with them themselves, we do see people in very simple things. Like one team had a ritual where there was a 5-person team. So each person was responsible for lunch one day a week. Very, very simple, but they ate together at the same time every day. They got to express a little bit of their individuality because I could choose the meal for us on that day, but it was just such a regular thing. And when you ask teams, do you have things like that you do? Some teams say we do, and other teams say we absolutely don't. And we see in the data that teams that have those kinds of rituals that they do together see their work as more meaningful. They not only see the ritual as more meaningful, but they actually come to see the work itself is more meaningful. And it's almost as though by bonding together as a team in a way that's not really about work, this is just lunch, but having that experience as a team changes us as a team and does help us to see whatever boring task we have to do next at work as filled with a little bit more meaning.
Can you give a couple of other examples? You talked about buying lunch once a week or something like that, but can you give a couple of other examples of really effective rituals in the workplace?
We saw when everyone started working from home because of the pandemic, one thing that happens is rituals get disrupted. So, for example, you can't have lunch together every day of the week. And we saw people get really creative on rituals that they came up with on Zoom because so much is happening on Zoom now. And one of the ones that I really loved is people just did a very quick, at the beginning of every meeting, everyone would click the emoji that expressed how they were feeling. And it just populated. If you had a screen of 16 people or whatever it might be, you just saw how every single person was doing, which means you can kind of take an average of the group, but you can also see maybe who needs a little bit more help today. And that's the tiniest, quickest kind of ritual. Sometimes when I say ritual, people think it's going to be a 4-hour long meditation retreat or something like that. Those I'm sure are great too, but I often mean these really small ones, but they become quite meaningful. And what's important is you don't just do it one time. Doing it one time is nice, right? I get a gut check of the group. But what happens is we become a group that does that emotional check-in at the beginning of every meeting. And we come to rely on it, and it comes to be part of how we do things. And we know that because other teams don't do that. This is something for us, and it shows that we care about each other. It shows that we're in this together. So these really small actions sometimes can have a big, big effect when we come up with them ourselves, as I said, and when we repeat them over time.